Welcome to RealMyst Archive. Today, we examine a case that is more than 55 years old and still unresolved. The Isdal woman.
RealMyst Archives.
Some say she was a spy. Others describe her as a sex worker. In November 1970, her partially burned body was found in Norway's Isdal Valley. She carried no identification. The labels had been removed from her clothing. Several objects near her body had been deliberately altered. Shortly afterward, police recovered 2 suitcases she had left behind at a train station. Inside were wigs, foreign currency, and handwritten notes written in code. Over the years, explanations have ranged from suicide to Cold War-era espionage. On November 29, 1970, a man hiking in the Isdal Valley near Bergen, accompanied by his 2 daughters, discovered the remains of a woman on a rocky slope. The woman was found lying face up. She was completely naked. Her body showed extensive burn damage, though it was not fully destroyed. Several items were documented near the body: fragments of burned clothing, an umbrella, 2 plastic bottles contained traces of petroleum, a half-empty bottle of alcohol. Matches and remnants of footwear were recovered. No identification documents were found. Nothing at the scene indicated the woman's identity. All clothing fragments had their manufacturer labels removed. The plastic bottles showed signs of deliberate alteration. Identifying markings had been carefully scratched away. These changes appeared intentional. At this point, police could not determine whether these actions were carried out by the woman herself or by another person. The scene raised questions that went beyond the cause of death. The autopsy revealed a very high concentration of barbiturate sleeping pills in the woman's digestive system. The quantity was far above therapeutic levels and consistent with voluntary ingestion. Carbon monoxide was also detected in her lungs. This indicated that the woman was alive when the fire began and inhaled smoke as the flames spread. The official cause of death was recorded as a combination of barbiturate poisoning and carbon monoxide inhalation. Given the absence of identification and the altered objects, police initially opened an investigation for possible homicide. Shortly after the discovery, police identified 2 suitcases the woman had left in a railway station locker. Inside, investigators found clothing, personal items, several wigs, and foreign currency. Among the items found in the suitcases were handwritten notes. They were not written as ordinary text, but as sequences of letters and numbers arranged in a structured manner. Investigators concluded that the notes were coded entries. These codes were later used to reconstruct parts of the woman's travel history, including dates and locations. Using hotel records and information derived from the coded notes, police traced the woman's movements in the weeks before her death. She stayed in multiple hotels across Norway. She used several different names, all of which were later confirmed to be false. She provided inconsistent personal information regarding her nationality and occupation. Payments were consistently made in cash. Hotel staff described her behavior as calm, reserved, and methodical. At this stage of the investigation, police had reconstructed much of the woman's travel history. What they could not reconstruct was her identity. The evidence showed a person capable of planning, organization, and consistency. At the same time, the final scene suggested disorientation and collapse. In the years following the discovery, investigators considered several explanations. The first was suicide. The woman had ingested a large quantity of sleeping pills. She had no identification. No signs of struggle were found. The altered objects could have been modified by the woman herself as part of a deliberate attempt to disappear. A second hypothesis emerged in the context of the Cold War. The woman moved frequently, used multiple identities, paid in cash, and avoided personal traces. At the time, Norway hosted sensitive military and research installations, including facilities linked to weapons development and NATO activity. Some investigators considered the possibility that the woman was involved in intelligence-related activities, although no direct evidence ever confirmed this. A third hypothesis focused on criminal activity linked to prostitution. This theory was based on her frequent travel, use of aliases, and stays in multiple hotels. It suggested a possible violent encounter rather than a planned death. However, no client, intermediary, or criminal network was ever identified. None of these scenarios could be conclusively established. Each explained part of the evidence, but none explained it all. Decades later, a new element entered the discussion through a late testimony. A man who identified himself as a former Swiss banker claimed to have known a woman matching the Isdal woman's profile. According to him, she lived under multiple identities, changed names regularly, and avoided leaving administrative traces. She appeared calm, controlled, and deliberate in her behavior. He did not claim she was an intelligence agent. He did not provide a real name. He offered no documents or dates. What his account adds is not proof, but context. It aligns with what the investigation had already established. A woman capable of maintaining several parallel identities, handling money discreetly, and moving across borders without anchoring herself to a single life. This testimony does not solve the case, but it challenges the idea of a sudden psychological breakdown or an improvised disappearance. Another late account describes an encounter in the Isdal Valley with a woman who appeared distressed, lightly dressed, and unprepared for the terrain and weather. Modern readings of the toxicology report focus on timing rather than dosage alone. Barbiturates do not always cause immediate loss of control. In some cases, they produce prolonged confusion, impaired judgment, and disorientation. This offers a plausible explanation for a final phase marked by erratic decisions, following a period of otherwise controlled behavior. Taken together, these reassessments do not solve the case. They do not reveal the woman's identity. They do not establish external involvement. What they do is reduce the number of contradictions. They suggest that the Isdal woman may not be a story of chaos from the beginning, but of control followed by collapse. More than 50 years after her death, the Isdal woman remains unidentified. What is established is limited but clear. She deliberately concealed her identity. She moved methodically across the country using false names. She ingested a lethal quantity of sleeping pills. And she was alive when the fire began. What remains uncertain is why. Recent reassessments do not overturn the official conclusion. They do not prove espionage. They do not introduce a new suspect. What they offer is a more coherent way of reading the evidence. In that sense, the Isdal woman case remains unresolved, not because the facts are missing, but because their meaning is still open to interpretation.
RealMyst Archives.
If this case raised questions for you, you're not alone. Many details still divide investigators, families, and researchers today. If you have a different interpretation, or if one element stood out to you, feel free to share it in the comments. If you found this investigation valuable, leaving a like helps the video reach a wider audience. And if you want to follow future cases like this one, consider subscribing. New investigations are released regularly,